All right. Well, thank you everyone for your patience. I'd like to welcome you all to our second Color Your World Sweepstakes webinar, Water-Based Inks and Special Effects. Today we have Rob Coleman and Carl Busey of Nazdar SourceOne, and they will be discussing the different available water-based technologies and how they can create new profit centers for your printing business. This webinar will be roughly 60 minutes long, and that time includes question and answer sessions after the presentation. Our first webinar, Water-Based Inks 101, focused on a review of the products in the MagnaColor line, as well as best practices when printing with water-based inks. The focus of this webinar will be on using special effect inks and will include discussion on puffs, glitters, and crackle inks. As we go along, please type in your questions into the GoToWebinar control panel. We'll be collecting all of those questions and we will answer those during the Q&A section at the end of the webinar. Would like to let everybody know that the webinar is being recorded, and a link to the recording and the presentation materials will be provided to all registrants via email within 24 hours. Before we start, I would like to remind all attendees to register for our Color Your World sweepstakes. MagnaColors and Nazdar SourceOne are sending 2 winners on an expenses-paid trip to FESPA 2013 in London at the end of June. As registered attendees of this webinar, you will be receiving bonus entries. So please visit SourceOne.Nazdar.com/coloryourworld and enter today to win this exciting trip. So without further ado, I'm going to turn control of this webinar over to your presenters, Rob Coleman and Carl Busey. Rob, take it away.
Thank you, Jeff, and welcome everybody. One second here. All righty, everybody ought to be able to see my screen. I'd like to welcome everybody, as Jeff stated, to the second installment of our webinar series with water-based printing and MagnaColors in particular. I'm certainly have some folks on who were on the last call, and we probably also have some new ones who are not. So what we're going to do very quickly is we're going to take just a few minutes and we're just going to briefly recap a couple things from last week. Most importantly, get into a little more in-depth discussion on some best practices for printing water-based inks. Then we're going to dive right into the special effects part, and we'll probably go through that in about a half hour. I'm guessing we'll be done probably about 45 minutes. Leave us plenty of time for question and answers. Again, please enter into the chat, and Jeff and group will log those as we move along. So let's go ahead and get started. If we recall, let's see there. If I can get 1 second. There we go. Real quick, folks, just about who we are. Nazdar was founded way back in 1922, and SourceOne is the distribution arm of Nazdar SourceOne. Most importantly, there at the bottom right of the screen, we are the master distributors in North America for all of the MagnaColors water-based products, and our location across all United States, Mexico, and Central America is gives us the ability to service any and all customers in that region. So who is MagnaColor? They are, as I said, our water-based supplier. They're a manufacturer out of the United Kingdom. They were established over about 35 years ago, way back in 1978, and all they do is water-based. That's it, nothing else. They don't use any PVCs, any phthalates. They're a very environmentally conscious company and have been from day one. They're a superb supplier to us for all of your water-based solutions. Last week, we discussed pretty much what you see on the screen. And I just want to remind everybody, this is the core MagnaColor product offering. And they have everything from discharge products, soft bases for whites and lights, high solids opaque bases, and then pigments that are used in all of these bases. We went through a fair amount of detail on all these products last time. If you have not and would like, we do have a link to that presentation, not only the recording, which of course is very big, but just the PowerPoint itself, which is a nice little document for you and potentially for your staff as well. So this is the core products. We're really not going to get into any of these. If you were not on the call, or if you still do have some discussion points that you'd like to raise on these, we can certainly address these at the end, any questions you may have on any of the other Magna products. But we're really going to focus today primarily on some special effect inks. So before we get started, I think it is on the special effects, it's really critical to understand that water-based or any alternative chemistry to plastisol is a little bit different. We're used to I say easy peasy, right? We can in some ways cheat the systems a lot and get just super results with plastisols. Water-based and the other chemistries, it does narrow some. We need to make certain that we've got our screen prep processes, our production process, everything really mic'd in as narrow as we can to really, it sounds kind of hokey, but I'd say CPR. So we can be consistent, we can be predictable, and we can be repeatable. And ultimately, that's how we're successful in business and how we make money, by minimizing any downtimes and any problems, hopefully before they even start. So let's go real through these just about 4 slides here just to discuss primarily pre-press issues. For our screen mesh, you know, a lot of folks just determine their ink deposit by using mesh count, and really mesh count alone is just not sufficient. Really what's important is the percent open area, and thread diameter is a big part of that. A thinner thread is going to allow us to get a much more optimal ink deposit, and that is what's recommended for water-based printing. Is we'll get a larger percent open area with a thinner thread. We'll develop our stencil with our emulsion coating. And it is extremely important to make certain that our mesh is fully clean to avoid any pitfalls we may have with fish eyes or pinholes on press. So we want to make certain we get our haze completely removed, we're fully degreased, and dried thoroughly before we coating. And that's going to be kind of a common theme here in pre-press. And Carl, by the way, if you have anything that you want to comment before, if I forget, just go ahead and chime it in before we get to the specialties. So secondly, on the screen prep, we want to make certain that we are using our scoop coater correctly, okay? And that's how we're going to apply a nice, even emulsion coating. These scoop coaters, if we're doing it manually, of course, they have 2 different edges. You have a dull edge and a sharp edge, and generally some general guidelines. Dull edge is much better for putting a better emulsion coating down more even onto a coarser mesh below a 200 thread per inch, and flip it over on the sharp edge above the 200. And, made easy. And that was interesting. To apply a proper coating, we really want to make certain that we do this procedurally, the same in, same out. Extremely important to make certain we have a consistent emulsion over mesh. And you know, a general recommendation: 1 coat on the outside or the shirt side of that screen, and come back with 2 coats back on the squeegee or the ink side, if you will. And what that allows us to do is really get that stencil thickness on the outside, the shirt side of the screen, which is where we want it. Really important, again, dry thoroughly, print side down, you know, to make certain that we're having that emulsion settle properly. Now, one thing that's a little unique with water-based that you may not necessarily do with a plastisol is apply a face coating, and that is really recommended on the squeegee side. And what that can do is help you to prolong that screen life, because as that squeegee is abrading the mesh back and forth over a long run, we can begin to have some stencil breakdown. So by having that face coating back on the squeegee side, it can really help to prolong that screen life.
Yeah, well, Rob, if I could interject there, when doing a face coat, I like using the sharp edge of the squeegee, and what that does is that's not going to add a lot of stencil thickness on the inside, but lower your RZ factor, which will help it from premature breakdown.
Thank you, Carl. If I can get my slide to go, there we go. So how about some more screen prep tips here? We want to make certain we fully develop, fully expose the stencil. And you know what that means, of course, is that light source really needs to infiltrate the entire thickness of the emulsion coating. Any underexposed screens are going to lead to some breakdown, primarily on the squeegee side, and lead to pinholes and ultimately rejects. You know, one thing you have to remember, if we get pinholes in a screen with a plastisol, you got a nice little spotting gun that you can use to blow that out. Cannot do that with water-based. You're not blow it out with a solvent blower like we do with plastisol. We can cheat our stencils many times running with plastisol inks, not so much with water-based. It's really important to fully develop that screen. And how do you know if you're completely exposed? Exposure calculators really are the best way to do that, and are certainly recommended. If you've never used one, you ought to take a look into it. SourceOne sells them. We have them from all the majors, you know, Kiwo, Autotype, Chromaline, and they range in price from about $30 to about $80, if I'm not mistaken, depending on the kind you get. Really, really good tool for your screen room. And of course, post-exposing will absolutely help to improve the hardness of the screens as well, to varying degrees. Particularly if you have, say, fluorescent bulbs, it's going to absolutely help to harden that. And with an SBQ emulsion, it will continue the cross-linking process. Secondly, hardeners, many cases, are recommended for water-based sinks, and that is certainly to extend the screen life and on longer print runs. There are different types of hardeners, okay, and obviously, you know, the more hard the screen is, right, it can be more difficult to fully reclaim as well, so you have to find that balance of the chemistry that you're using and the ability to reclaim as well as give you the screen life you'd like. And once again, dry fully, very, very important, because if we rush that screen to production, that you're going to have some potential of some trapped moisture in there, and that absolutely is going to lead to some breakdown on press. Very, very important to make certain that we take our time, do our due process to fully dry those screens. So as we go out to press, what would be different with printing water-based inks versus plastisols, for instance? Just some good recommended guidelines. We suggest using a little more angle than you're accustomed to probably with plastisols, maybe at about a 30 to 35 degree pitch, and a minimal squeegee pressure. That combination of angle and minimal pressure is going to lead to less abrasiveness again on the mesh. It's all about screen life. Secondly, take the corners, those edges of those squeegees, round them or dull them. It's going to help to have breakdown along the sides of the screen where the edge of the squeegee is. Very good practice. And really a softer squeegee is the best for printing water-based. We do recommend a triple durometer squeegee that gives you a nice soft printing surface, but yet gives you the harder backing to keep it from bowing over. And we do carry one, it's a 55-90-55 that is highly recommended for water-based printing. Lastly, out on press, full cure of the inks. Basically, it is a combination of time, temperature, and airflow. We need enough time at the right temperature and adequate airflow to fully exhaust all that water and fully cure the ink. The ink film will not be fused and cured until all the water is exhausted out. So it is important to do that. And you know what that means is a forced air dryer or a newer generation electric dryer with a good bit of airflow that's going to facilitate the curing of the ink. Carl, do you have any comments on this before we move on? All righty. Well, folks, we're about ready to get right into the specialties, but before we do, and you probably guessed it, we just got a couple quick questions that Jeff's going to ask you on a poll. Just want to know a little bit about your shop. Shouldn't take very long at all, so I'll turn it over to Jeff.
All right, everybody. What we'd like to ask you is what type of presses are in your shop. The options are manual or auto. If you have both, please choose the one that you plan on printing water-based inks with. We'll give this about 45-60 seconds, and we'll let everybody know.
Jeff, I can't hear you. Full of static.
All right.
Welcome to GoToWebinar, web events made easy.
Sorry about that, everybody. Okay, 60% Rob, our manual, 40% our auto. We have one more question that we'd like to ask you before we move on. How many automatic presses are in your shop? Looks like we've got 50% have voted. We'll give this another 10 or 15 seconds. All right, Rob, looks like 25% of our attendees have 1 to 2 13% have 3 to 4, another 13% have 5 or more, and 50% are NA. So I guess that would be the folks from the previous question that had the manual presses. So
very good.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that. Thank you, folks, for your time. And I apologize for that little bit of static there. Sometimes we do have some technical difficulties, but so far, so good, and we'll keep on rolling. All right, let's get into the meat of it here. And at this juncture, I'm going to turn it over to Carl, and he's going to run most of it, and I'll try and keep my mouth closed and interject a few things. And by the way, we didn't explain at the very beginning, for those of you who are not aware, me, Rob Coleman, I handle the product management for Nazdar SourceOne for all textile inks. Carl is our resident expert of all textile, and he has been in a sales role and has now been transitioning over into for lack of a better word, a technical service field support sales applications. I think that's a mouthful of role. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and just put this slide up. There's lots of different specialty inks that Magna makes, and we really don't have time to go through every single one of them. There are a couple that are not on this page, for instance, a glow-in-the-dark or reflective that are available as well. But these are the ones we're just going to run through for you guys. We felt there's a number of them that were products that could be used fairly quickly in your operations, and some neat special effects. And there are foams and puffs, some different bonds for using adhesive as well as combination with foam to get transferred foil on puffs. Different crackles. By the way, you may know crack by hand. That's a kind of, if you've ever done that with a plastisol, is the only way you could do it with a plastisol. They are available in a different type of fashion called self-crack we'll get into. Some of the pearls and glitters, and finish up the home stretch there with some metallic powders and the ultra stretch product. So without further ado, I'm going to turn it over to Carl. Lastly, I beg your pardon, there is one more further ado. 20Colours just recently updated all their technical data sheets. We do not have all the new ones put up on our website yet. As a matter of fact, it's a rather extensive project what we have to do, but probably within about a few weeks we're going to have everything updated on our website with their newest technical data sheet. However, if there's something that you cannot find in the meantime, shoot us an email and we'll certainly arrange to get it out to you. All righty, Mr. Carl Busey.
Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to start out with the Magna Print Suede Foam. A lot of you are probably already familiar with suede and a plastisol. And the suede foam is much like what you would see with the plastisol version of it. One of the major differences that you'll see is the hand, and that'll be the thing pretty much for all of these specialty type products. The suede foam will simulate the suede or a flock effect, and it has very good hand and also displays great wash fastness. And one thing that's pretty unique about this product and a lot of water-based products, with the exception of the high solid systems, is that you can dry clean most of these products, which is not the case with a plastisol. Not only can you dry clean them, but a lot of these products you can also iron. There are some exceptions with that, so before you go ironing them, I would test them. This particular base and most of the specialty products, you can use the Eco pigments with a maximum of 6% pigment load. You can print them direct onto fabric to get good effect on light garments, but you can also print them on a underbase to be able to print onto dark backgrounds like blacks and navies and the likes of those colors. Typically you would use an 86 to a 110 mesh with a semi-rounded squeegee. It's not necessary that you use a rounded or rectangular squeegee, but obviously those will give you more deposit and you'll get a much better effect. Also, I want to mention that it's not necessary to print with just 86 or 110. You can go to higher meshes, but it will diminish the effect. And also, when you're printing multiple color designs, it's best to try to print this in the last head or before flash. If you are going to have to use a flash and put it earlier in the sequence, you want to be careful not to over flash it and cause the product to start to expand before it goes down the dryer. Here's a picture of the suede foam with a 5% load of the pink H5B pigment in it. If you can go to the next slide there, Rob. This is a little bit closer up picture of it so you can actually see the suede effect. And again, the hand on this is much softer than what you would see with a plastisol.
Yeah, you can really, in this picture it's nice, you can really see the chenille velvety type of appearance. Not only, so, you know, visually, but as Carl states, the feel of it is exceptional as well.
Okay, next would be the expanding LT. What the expanding LT is it is a puff, much like what you would see with the plastisol. Again, the same applies. 6% maximum pigment load and can be printed direct onto light colored garments or even dark colored garments, but usually if you're going to print on dark colored garments, in order to retain the vibrant colors, you would want to have an underbase. Again, the mesh ranges are going to be the same as the suede, and again, you would want to print in the last head or flash before you put any following colors onto it.
You know, I think that's safe to say pretty much for all special effects, and that's certainly not unique to water-based. You have to do it with plastisols as well. We have the statement, you know, you can't print everything last. However, special effects are generally not designed to run wet on wet and could potentially pick up on screens. So they do need to be ran last or flashed.
Okay, again, here's a picture of the puff. And as you can see, it actually has a little bit better edge definition than what a standard plastisol puff has. Next slide. Here's a good side-by-side comparison, close-up look of the two different products. Kind of gives you an idea of the difference in the way that these two foaming products expand.
Yes, you can notice really that obviously the one on the right, the LT, is much more of a traditional puff versus the chenille or velvety type of appearance of the suede foam. And to Carl's point earlier, I think it is important to understand that, you know, you could get lots of different results by varying your mesh counts. And many times, if we just want to give the illusion of a little depth, of course, go through a finer mesh count, just get a little bit of dimension on the final print, not the full-blown puff, for instance, that we would get in a large, you know, piece of vector art like we have here.
Yeah, just as a reference point, both of these prints here were printed through an 86 mesh using a 7090 durometer. Were both single-stroked. Okay, next slide, please. Next product we're going to talk about is the MagnaPrint Bond 40, which is a ready-to-use adhesive that you can use for foil and also for flock paper on textiles. It is a very good foil adhesive, and when printing this particular product, it is not as dependent. When you print a plastisol, you have to get a really good deposit down, and usually most people would either do a print flash print with a full adhesive on plastisol or use like 100 micron in order to get enough down to give you a good adhesion. This particular product doesn't need the same depth whenever you're going to do a post application with foil or with flock paper. And let's see, make sure that the fabric is fully cooled before removing the foil, and it's always good to take like a dry eraser or something and varnish it while it's still hot, let it cool, and then peel it Usually you're going to want to use about 10 to 12 seconds on the heat press at about 365 degrees. And again, let it cool well. And this product can be tinted in case there's any pinholes, tinted to the same color as the flock paper or to the same color as the foil.
And I think it's important to note too that many people do foils right now, and as Carl stated, with a traditional plastisol foil adhesive. Of course, a water base is a non-PVC. We do have many companies, major brands, and retailers now across the world, and starting to infiltrate here in the United States, who are requiring non-PVC for all of their applications. This is a product then for the use in foil and flock papers that would meet those RSLs.
Okay, here's a couple of different pictures showing the different applications. The one on the left obviously is a 2-color foil, and the one on the right is actually using flock paper. Okay, the next one is starting to get into a little bit of more specialty type stuff where you start incorporating a couple of different products. And I think this would be a good time to point out that the Magna Special Effects products are much like a plastisol, that these products can be intermixed with each other. They can be used in a lot of different applications, and the limitations are, really are with you, not with the products, because you can intermix all of these products together. They're all compatible with each other, and you can come up with a lot of varying effects. This next print that we're going to look at was incorporating the expanding LT as an underbase, and then putting the Magna Print Bond 40 on the top to give a raised foil effect. And again, using a 6% pigment load. And as you can see there on the right, printed through a 110 mesh flash to touch. And then you want to be careful when doing this not to flash too long and cause the expanding LT to expand before putting it on the Bond 40. That way you can control the blowing and get much better effect. Next slide, Rob. And here's the end results. It gives you kind of a high density type look with the foil on top. And again, the expanding of the puff actually happens when it goes through the dryer.
And of course the beauty is if we had other water-based colors on here, we wouldn't necessarily have foil sticking to those like you would a plastisol, with the exception, I think, with the high solids product that has the acrylic resin. You could run into some issues, but it's a great way to incorporate, as Carl stated, different techniques into one print.
All right, the next product. This is a pretty unique product. It's not unlike the plastisol version of the Crackle ink. The one difference that you will see is the hand. It has extremely soft hand. It comes in a white that can be colored with pigments, and it also comes in a neutral base that you can make colors out of. And again, it's the mesh ranges run from 38 to 110. It is important, just like whenever printing a Crackle plastisol, that you get a good deposit. The prints that we're going to be looking at were actually printed through an 86 with a 100 micron film, and done as a print flash print. And if you'll go to the next slide, Rob. And here's the end results. It was, again, 100 micron to a 86 mesh and done as a print flash print.
So these, Carl, were then stretched at the end after it's cooled down. We printed it, cured it, and they're stretched by hand, correct?
Correct. It is a mechanical crack. All right, to get into the colors, as you can see here, this actually was done as a 3 screens where there was actually a white printed underneath to give it more of an effect, and then the color was printed over the top. And as Rob had stated earlier, this is a product that actually you have to crack at the end of the dryer. Now, to get into one that's kind of unique to MagnaPrint and to a water-based system is the self-crack. It gives you the same effect that a crack would do, or as an old varnish antique look, and it causes crazing and checking. It gives you that weathered age look. This is a very cool product here, and you can get a lot of variations in the effects on this by the controlling how much you deposit. It is a 2-part system. You have to put down an underbase, and again, best printed through a 100 micron on both the underbase and on the top coat. The underbase can be tinted to get some variations, as you'll see in the next slide, where the print was actually tinted with an aluminum paste, and then pigments were added to the self-cracked top coat to give a really cool effect. And if you'll go to the next slide. And this is the effect. This was printed again through an 86 mesh 100 micron with aluminum paste on the underbase with a 90-60 durometer squeegee. It was then flashed and printed a second time under base, and then the cracked top coat had a 6% pigment load of a blue pigment, and then was done as a print flash print. The leaves are actually done with the ND Extra and was printed through a 230 with a 2% pigment load. And if you go to the next slide, here's a close-up of the self-crack. As you can see, it's a really cool effect. And again, this isn't something that you have to pull at the end of the dryer. The cracking and crazing effect actually happens whenever it goes through the dryer.
So, Carl, when this was printed and on press and taken it off and put it on the dryer belt, it was a solid blue ink film.
Correct.
And the process in the dryer with the bottom splitting the top coat.
Correct. All right, next slide. The Magna Pearl is a pretty unique product in the Magna range. It is a pearlescent paste. It's ready for use. It comes in a couple of different bases. One is a gold and the other one is a silver. Both of these are ready for use. They can be pigmented to come up with different colors. And again, the print range on this is 86 to 156. I've had some customers even put it through a 196. On this product here, although you can go up to a 6% pigment load, the more pigment that you add to it, the more it's going to diminish the pearl effect. And the deposit, you want to get a good deposit down, and it can be underbase and won't affect the pearl effect. If you go to the next slide, Rob. Here is actually this particular product right here only has a 1% load on the blue, and I think it's a 2% pigment load on the, you can't tell it here, but this is actually a yellow gold color here. All right, glitter binder. The QP UK is a glitter binder that is a carrier to be able to put in your own glitter flakes. You can use any size that you want in there, and that will actually dictate the mesh count that you would need to use. You can put up to a 20% load in there. This has very good elasticity, very good washability, and it is a great carrier. It actually gives you a dry look, unlike plastisol glitter bases. It's a very dry look, and it has great adhesion and great wash fastness. And again, just like any glitter, you want to print this in the last head or flash it. This particular print right here is a 10% load of a 004 flake, and you can get these flakes in a number of different places. Most of the suppliers out there have them, but you can also buy them direct from the glitter manufacturers, such as GlitterX in New Jersey. Just want to make sure that the flakes that you order will withstand the temperatures of 330 degrees.
Another good source is Meadowbrook. They're in New Jersey as well. You can Google them. They have lots of different types of flakes as well. Also, the polyester flakes, of course, you don't have to worry about tarnishing like you would a metal flake at all, too.
Okay, here is actually incorporating the glitter binder using a 10% flake, and this is actually it's kind of hard to tell in this particular print right here, but this actually has a puff up underneath it to actually cause it to raise a little bit. I believe this is the one. No, actually, this is the straight glitter flake. Sorry, I apologize. But you can actually use the blowing agent to put up underneath this to give a raise effect. And again, the mesh count used on this will be dictated on the size flake that you use.
So if you wanted to do that, Carl, would you recommend like an underbase of the suede foam? What would be your recommendation?
Actually, the LT foam seems to give a much better effect.
Thank you.
And here we go, the bead adhesive. I'm sure everybody remembers back a few years ago when caviar beads were all the craze, and all the customers were wanting to do this. This is a very good adhesive for beads and sequins. Again, you would print this through an 86 mesh. This would be one of those cases where you need to get it down a really good deposit, so we recommend that you use a 200 micron screen, and then you would apply the beads while the product's still wet, just like with a plastisol adhesive. And you can do that by using a dip tray. Just flip the print over, press it down to adhere the beads, and then just send it down the dryer.
Thank you, Carl. And hey, folks, before we move on, we just have one last question, super simple, that Jeff is going to poll you guys with.
Just want to find out from everybody if they've registered for the Color Your World sweepstakes. Just kind of curious how many of the folks here have signed up for that. If you please take a moment to answer that question. All right. 50% have voted. Give this another 10 seconds. All right, so we'll close this poll and share the results with everybody. Looks like we've got a lot of people that if they go online to our website and sign up for the Color Your World sweepstakes, they can get a trip to FESPA London, courtesy of Nazdar Source One. And don't forget, for being here at this webinar, you will get a bonus entry.
Excellent. Thank you, Jeff. Does that include breakfast with the Queen Mom?
Maybe Daniel, Craig, but I don't think the Queen Mom.
Thank you. Hey, actually, that'd be an awesome trip to win. I'd love to go to London and be able to attend the show. And for those winners that are, of course, Magna will have a exciting booth there with all the latest and greatest. And actually, I will be there with them. So make sure you stop by and we'd spend a little time together. So moving right along, Carl.
Yes, the MagnaPrint Glitter AP. This is actually one of my favorite products in the special effects range because you can really get a lot of bang for your buck out of this product without a whole lot of effort. I don't know if anybody that's on the webinar has ever had any experience with the salt flake or sugar glitter, and it was extremely popular a couple of years ago. Where you had to print on it an adhesive, and then you would either have to dry screen the product on and then vacuum it at the end of the dryer, or how most people did it, or brush it off. I've even seen people take tape and pull off the excess, because you kind of just put the sugar flake on there and just let it fall where it would on a shirt, and then where the adhesive was, it would stick to it, and where it wasn't, you would have to go through the task of getting it off. And even after it had been down the dryer and you'd done that, it still would come off excessively. I mean, this was a product I remember going to people's shops, and I would come home, and 2 weeks later I would notice my neighbor's cat walking down the road, and they would have that sugar glitter all over them. The stuff was really a mess. Had a real ill effect on your equipment, but it was something that was extremely popular. It seemed like everybody out there was wanting to use sugar glitter, at least everybody's customers. Well, this is a product that will actually give you that sugar glitter effect without all the mess. You print it on. It's real easy to print. You can do it in 1 or 2 screens. You can do it on dark garments, printing a discharge underbase, or you can even print it onto a white underbase. And it goes through 60 to an 86 mesh. I've printed it even up to a 110, but it seems to work better if you stay in the range of a 60 to 86 mesh and use a 100 micron film, or use a 15 plus EOM on your screens. And again, you would want to print this last or print it just before flash. Here's a picture of the glitter AP with a 5% red pigment going through an 86 mesh, and this was a print flash print with no underbase, going direct onto a black garment. And this one here is actually the glitter AP with a 5% black pigment load going through an 83 mesh, and this actually was a single hit on this yellow garment. Next slide, please. And here is a little bit different variation of the same product. On the left, the water drop is actually printed direct onto the garment and then flashed, and then you have a violet pigment mixed in at a 5% going through an 83 mesh. It was cured at 320 degrees, and then took a gloss paper and hit it in the transfer press, and it gives you that glossy effect. And the press was set at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for 12 seconds. And again, this would be a product that I would encourage everybody to try. It is something that I think can add a lot of value to a print, and with very little effort. It's one of our more popular special effects products.
And I think that's key too, because when you get into special effects, and it always is kind of sizzle, right? You got the steak and the sizzle, and everybody likes to look at the sizzle, but most people don't want to necessarily have to pay for increased costs, lower production times, what have you. And a product like this can be done in very in a fashion that is conducive with your production environment. And the fact that you then can take something of this nature of hitting it with a heat tap afterwards with some gloss paper, again, really gives you multiple dimensions that you could potentially offer to your customers with the same product.
And moving right along, the gold binder. The gold binder is actually a carrier that you can purchase your shimmer size flakes or finer flakes, the metallic powders, and mix into at a 15% pigment load. Most cases I find that a 10% load is adequate, but to make different metallic colors and different shimmers. Printing parameters, of course, is going through an 86 to a 110 mesh. Again, the size flake is what's going to dictate what the mesh count would be, and you would print it just much like you would print your regular metallics if you were printing plastisol.
Now, Carl, this is, even though the name is gold binder, it's a neutral clear binder. Is that correct?
Correct. It doesn't have any fillers or anything in it, so it actually is very clear. It does not diminish the reflective power of the particle. Now, one thing I would caution people about is whenever you're purchasing these glitters and metallic particles, it's best to use a polyester or a non-ferrous type product because, as everybody knows, aluminum powders and stuff will tarnish if they have not been capsulated, and it will tarnish and diminish greatly the brilliance of the powder. This particular one here is actually using a silver metallic flake that actually is an aluminum flake, but actually has been coated and treated to where it doesn't tarnish.
Now, it's kind of hard to see in this picture, but if you wanted to say gloss that up even more, could you hit that with a coated transfer paper, Carl?
Absolutely. It will gloss up nicely. And there are a couple of other ways of glossing it, and I think the next slide will actually get into another product that actually is a great way to gloss up any of your prints. This is a pretty unique product. Most of these water-based systems that are out there actually use an acrylic resin. This particular product right here is a PU or polyurethane resin, the MagnaPrint Ultra Stretch. This product here has an unbelievable amount of elasticity. You can print it on Lycra, you can print it on spandex, and actually has, I believe, well over 200% elasticity. It can actually be mixed into any of the other products, and again, you can actually print this over the top of products on the Ultra Stretch base, and hit it with a heat press and actually get a great gloss effect. And again, this comes in a base and also has a white as well. And if you'll go to the next slide, I actually think we have an example. It's kind of hard to tell here, but this was actually hit with a heat press, and it creates a very glossy print. And again, this product will stretch as much as your Lycra or spandex. It's great for doing singlets or any type of performance fabrics where elasticity is important.
So could I mix some of that in, say, with a metallic silver like you had on the previous slide to gain a little better elasticity if I needed it?
Yes, you could mix it in to increase the elasticity, although the gold binder and the glitter QP UK have excellent stretchability already. So unless you're going on something like a spandex or lycra or some type of blend like that, then I don't think that you would really need it. This is a product that usually, if you have something like spandex or something, you need a lot of elasticity. Would be a great product to use, but you can incorporate it into any of the products that we've talked about.
Excellent. Thank you, Carl. I appreciate that. Well, folks, that wraps up the slides on the special effects. We'd like now, I turn it over to Mr. Pollock back in Kansas and see what kind of questions that we may have from the audience.
Okay, guys, here's the first question. Viewer wanted to know if Magna or Source One offer the aluminum powder that you were discussing earlier.
To add the flake add to the gold binder.
The aluminum powder. Is this ringing a bell?
Yes, I think that I think that's a product that we could source for them. It is a specialty product. It's not something that is a standard product for us, but something that we could definitely supply them with. But we would probably need some adequate lead times on that product.
Yeah, that's actually a good question. We may already source one to be used in our conventional Nazdar, solvent-based inks, or potentially. I know historically what has been available on the plastisol side has come from a manufacturer. Has generally been a dispersion on the aluminum side. Now, as far as the other flakes, again, many times your best bet for is to go and take a look and directly to some of the manufacturers like Glitterex or Meadowbrook and be able to buy directly from them even. I think most of the time they have minimums. I'm not certain what it is. It may be a pound. I could be wrong. But we certainly do have the avenues.
Okay, I'll tell you what. Well, we know who asked that question, so we'll follow up with them personally after this webinar and make sure that they get the information they need. Next question is in regards to the ink suede foam and expanding LT. The viewer wants to know if it will dry in the screen like standard water base.
Yes, that's a great question. All water base has the potential to actually dry into the screen because you're dealing with the carrier of water. With that said, though, water bases came a long way in the past few years in regards to the open time and the screen life. And even to extend out that open time in the screen, there's a number of additives that is offered by Magna that extends the open time in the screen that allows you to be able to run production. One thing that really helps that is the way that you actually print that. Traditionally with plastisol, we do a flood print stroke. With water-based, you do just the opposite. You want to leave the image area flooded, and instead of a thin flood coat, you actually want to, I call it buttering the toast. You want to have a good slathering of ink in the image area, and it will actually run very well. And again, you can there's a lot of different additives that you can use with these products that would extend the screen open time. One of them is actually a retarder gel. With that said, keep in mind anytime that you put an inhibitor in there that is going to inhibit the evaporation of moisture is going to extend the amount of time that it needs to spend in the dryer to cure. Because with water-based, the process is that first you have to evacuate the moisture out of the ink film, and at that point it starts to cross-link. So the more products that you add in to inhibit that evacuation of moisture out, is also going to increase the amount of time that you need to spend in the dryer.
And Carl, that's an excellent point. That's why there are lots of additives, because different people's climatic conditions are going to basically dictate a different type of mix, if you will. If it's cold and dry, which is the worst case for evaporation, versus hot and wet, the products are going to perform differently. All these additives, as well as some very basic best procedures, were covered in the first seminar, and pull down that PowerPoint, and it has a few little discussion points about, you know, moving air and what to do to prolong screen open time.
Okay, great. Our next question is from Dave, and he knows that when tinting a plastisol glitter, that it's you lose the glitter effect. He wants to know if this is the same with Magna-Colors water base. Do you get to keep a better glitter effect?
You know, I'll address that one first, Carl. It may be what you're tinting it with as well. If you're tinting, even in a plastisol glitter, if you're using a pigment concentrate, you can use 1% to maybe 3% max and really get a great tint. And basically by doing that, you're keeping your volume the same. Now if you're using a finished ink, let's say I'm taking a blue or a red ink and adding that to that glitter and that plastisol, by the time you add enough colorant, say 20-25%, to get the color you want, you have absolutely now spread that flake over a much bigger area. So I would say, and Carl, correct me if I'm wrong, but I would say you could, you know, you could certainly do it if you did it the right way, I would say, with the plastisol. With the water base, you are absolutely using the concentrates. You're using very concentrated pigments to maintain a really nice sparkle or shine effect.
That'd be correct, Rob. I think that the amount of luster that you get with a water base versus a plastisol is much greater. One, you don't with a plastisol. Typically, you're encapsulating that flake. It is actually buried or is in the film, where with a water base, it's actually adhering it to the garment, and the flake is more to the surface, so there's a lot more brilliance to the flake. The other part of it is that the flakes tend to lay flatter, and you're getting a lot more surface or more edge that's showing in a water base versus a plastisol. So I think the effect that you get with a water base is much greater. And to that point, the difference in the hand is huge. The amount of hand that you would get with a, let's say, the 004 flake and a plastisol, because you're having to print down so much of the carrier of the base in order to adhere these flakes to the garment, versus what you're doing with a water base is extreme difference. It's night and day. So the water base it's much better effect with the glitters.
Okay, last question. Do you do a face coating after the screen dries from the first coat?
Carl?
You need to hear the question again, Carl?
I think we lost Carl. Are you there?
Sorry, I was on mute. I thought. Yeah, I'm here. Yes. Yeah, if you're referring to when Rob was talking about going back and putting a face coat on the squeegee side in order to get an extended life on the screen, yes, you would wait until it actually dries and then go back and do a face coat on the squeegee side. I would recommend using the sharp edge on it because you're not wanting to really build the stencil as much as you are as wanting to actually raise the RZ factor and for those that aren't familiar with what the RZ factor is, it's that variance between the lowest point and the highest point. And what you're wanting to do is just lower that difference between the highest point and the lowest point. That highest point is usually going to be the nipple of the threads. So what that's going to do is that it's going to give you a much smoother coat on the inside and keep it from wearing down. And it actually lowers the surface tension on the inside of the screen.
Thank you, Carl. Jeff, do we have any more?
That was the last question. Unless anybody wants to pop in one last more. Wait a second, here we go. Got a late minute. Or can you just better explain the face coat? Did we get that covered? Yes, we did. Outstanding. Thank you, Matthew. Okay, well, everybody, thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate you joining us this afternoon for a discussion of the 20Colours product line and special effects. On behalf of Rob and Carl, we want to wish you a great afternoon and the rest of the week. Please be on the lookout for our email from the GoToWebinar system later on. It should be this evening, maybe early tomorrow morning, and we will provide a link to the materials that were online as well as an opportunity to re-listen to the recording. So, gentlemen, unless you have anything further to add.
No, once again, just want to thank everybody as you just did, Jeff. Really appreciate everybody's time today. And please, any questions that you may think of, feel free to send an email in. We will certainly appreciate the opportunity to service all of your screen printing needs. Thank you and have a wonderful day.